Let's use the ChatGPT API. I'll show you how to talk programmatically with ChatGPT using the chat completions endpoint. You'll see how to ask ChatGPT a series of questions using the API and Python, just like you would if you were talking with it in the web interface. I'm Alex, data engineer and product developer. If you're building online or looking to optimize your work or your life with technology, I think you'll find great value on my channel. This video is part of my developer series. OpenAI has made it incredibly simple to use the ChatGPT API. All you have to do is sign up for a free account, log into the developer console, and then generate an API key. Let's do that now, and then I'll open up a Jupyter Notebook and start writing Python code to make requests. If you're brand new to ChatGPT, you can go to openai.com, click login, and here you can sign up for a new account. Once you've done that, you can go to platform.openai.com, and in here, we're going to go to the top right and click View API Keys. You can see I've created one, and let's create a new one today. I'm going to call it YouTube's Forever. And let's make that. So I'll just stick this API key in a text document for now. While we're in the console, we can go ahead and look at our usage statistics. I started using the API yesterday, and I used about 12 cents of my $5 free trial grant. In order to follow along with me today, you'll need to have Python installed. You'll also need to have Jupyter Notebook or Jupyter Lab. I prefer Jupyter Notebook, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that's installed by running pip install notebook. Next, I'm going to create a new folder for our project today. I'll go into my downloads, make a new directory called OpenAI API Quick Start. I'll go in there. Then I'm going to make some more directories. I'm going to make one called Notebooks and Source. That's where I'm going to put my notebook. I'll show you what I mean. In order to launch my notebook, I can just run Jupyter Notebook. And we'll see it launch right now. And from here, I'm going to navigate into that directory I created. I'm going to create a new folder, or rather a new notebook. All right, let's give this a name. I'm going to call it OpenAI API Quick Start. There's a simple example of making a request to the chat completions endpoint here in the OpenAI docs. I'm just going to grab this example, paste it into our notebook, and we're going to start from there. So if I go ahead and make this a markdown cell, then I can just sort of throw this in as code, and we can reference it pretty easily. So what I want to do is make this request with Python. So there's a library called requests, which we're going to use to make this. By the way, this needs to be installed with pip. So if I didn't have that, I could go ahead and say pip install requests, and that'll go ahead and do it. So we're definitely going to use requests, and let's just write some code right in the cell in order to do this. Well, we need a URL to make the request to, and it's going to be this one right here. So let's grab that, plug it in. What's next? We need some headers. You can see these header flags right here. And my header is going to be a dictionary in Python. And I need a content type. And that's application.json. And then I need this authorization bearer OpenAI key. Let's deal with that. Now this OpenAI key we're going to embed as an F string, which I can do like this. And get my brackets right. Okay, this is looking good. But I need to load this somehow. And you remember I stored it in that text file earlier. So let's go ahead and do that. But one way of doing that would just be to paste it right in. And we could do that for now. Okay, so we're working on a request here. Next we need this data object. So let's write some data. And you can see the fields that we need here. And in fact, I'm just going to grab these and stick them in right like this. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. We've got a model that we're calling. We've got some messages, and it has a temperature setting. Next, we need to write some code to actually go ahead and run this. So we're going to get back a response, and we're going to say requests.post, because it's a post request that we need to make. That's because we need to send data along with the request in order to get a response back. We're going to send our headers, and for the data, we actually need to turn it into a string. So I'm going to use JSON, and I'm going to say dump as a string our data. I'll also need to go ahead and import JSON for this to work. So let's go ahead and give this a shot. Okay, looks like we got a 200 response. And now what I can do is ask for the JSON content of that response, and we can see what it says. That's kind of difficult to read. What I could say is, in order to really understand this, I want to dump the JSON object, and I want to indent it with 4. Now it'll let us really clearly see what's happening. So the assistant wrote, this is a test. It shows us it used 13 prompt tokens, 5 completion tokens, and 18 total tokens. This is what it's going to charge our account in order to use the API. So now let's bundle this up into a function that we can use. I'm going to call it ChatGPT get, and we're going to want to be able to get the result of some message. From here, I'm going to copy and paste the code we wrote above. And we're going to get rid of those. Next, we want to replace the content with the message. And lastly, we want to make sure we're returning the response. So we can test this again, and I can say response, or in fact, let's do another function in order to test this. And we're going to say, make me smile. And I'm not gonna say any inputs for that. And we're gonna say the message equals tell me something that will make me smile. Now I'm gonna get the response from my function by feeding the message in. And in order to parse what we want out of the response, we look at the choices, first element, message, content. So the response equals choices, 0, message, content. So we'll go ahead and print that, and now let's run this. Right. Okay. Did you know that otters hold hands when they sleep to keep from drifting apart? That is adorable. That is actually adorable. Okay, cool. Very cool. So I pulled up a more complicated example of the chat completions endpoint from the OpenAI documentation. And here you can see the message is more complicated. I love learning from examples, so we're going to look at this in order to understand how this works. The first message they're passing is a system role message. This is to set the behavior or the persona of ChatGPT. Next, we're passing a user role message. This is like we were doing where we asked it a question to make me smile. Then, you can see in this example, we're actually passing in an assistant role message. What we're doing here is we're letting ChatGPT know about the context from the conversation that's happened up to this point in time. So in this example, what we want to ask ChatGPT is, where was it played? But in order to tell ChatGPT what it is, we need to give it the context of their answer to the previous question, which was, who won the World Series in 2020? So this lets you understand how we can use the chat completions endpoint to have a conversation with ChatGPT API in a similar way to how you would use the web interface, where you type something, it responds, and you type something again. With the API, every time you ask it a new question, you have to also feed in the entire history of the conversation that you need in order for it to have the context to answer you. Okay, we're going to write a function in order to be able to ask ChatGPT multiple questions in a row where it preserves the context of the conversation. Here's what I want my messages to be. I'm going to call them prompts. First one is going to be, what is the tallest mountain on Earth? And then I'm going to say, when was it first summited? All right, looks good. So let's write a function that'll allow us to call this. So I'm going to call it multi-prompt conversation. And we're going to take in our prompts. And from here, what I want to do is iterate over these, asking it a series of questions. So I'll say for prompt in prompts, I'll print it. Then I'll say answer equals ChatGPT make, we're going to call it conversation, and I'm going to feed in messages. Notice I have not defined this yet, so I'm going to have to do something about this. After we get the answer, I just want to print it. And then what I'm going to do is update messages with the answer. Okay, so you'll see what we're doing in a second here. First, let's deal with these messages. These better look like the messages that we're talking about up here. So what I need to make sure is that I have a role, and it's going to be a user. Then I need to have content, and that's going to be my prompt. So actually, I don't really want this here. I want this here. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Let's put that properly in. Okay, great. So we're adding our prompt as a message. We're going to go ahead and print that. Then we're going to, we need to create this ChatGPT conversation. And we're going to need to take in some messages. Okay. Now, I can tell you what I'm talking about with the messages. This one is going to be a list, and it's going to be something like this. So I could go ahead and document that. Cool. All right, this really makes it easy to understand what we're taking in, which is great. Now let's think about how to implement this. Given these messages, we pretty much know how to ask ChatGPT something. We already wrote about it here. So I'm going to grab this function and we're just going to reuse it. Okay, down here, oops. Okay, cool. It's looking like I want it to. Here, we just want to put our messages in. All right, I'm pretty happy with this. One thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and return the data from our response by calling the JSON method on it. This will give us a dictionary back that we can start working on. Looking at our answer here, this isn't really an answer, is it? It's more like a response. So let's just change it to response. And from the response, we actually need to parse the answer out. And we did that earlier. So I'm going to grab this line and we can use that. Great. And now we've got our answer, but I don't need to get the JSON anymore because this is actually returning a dictionary. I can be explicit about that and tell it it's returning a dictionary. Great. So we're going to print our answer. We're happy with that. What we need to do now is update messages so that we can keep talking to ChatGPT. That's where this last line comes in. Now, I don't want to append the answer. What I actually want to append is a new dictionary. And we're going to say that the role here is the assistant. And the content of what it's saying is the answer. So you can see how we're now telling ChatGPT what it told us in order so that it has the proper context to then ask another round of questions. So let's talk through this really quickly. We're going to have a conversation with a set of prompts. For each prompt, we're going to append a dictionary of the user where the content is the text of that prompt. And then we're going to print out what our messages history looks like. Then we're going to feed in that whole message history to ChatGPT and get a response back. We're going to parse the answer and we'll print the prompt next to the answer. Then we're going to put the answer back into the message queue so that ChatGPT retains a history of the conversation. And we'll print what the messages look like at that point. And we'll keep running that for each prompt we want to ask. The ChatGPT conversation endpoint, or function rather, is exactly what we've been seeing with actually making our request. Okay, let's learn about some mountains. The first time we call ChatGPT, we're just passing this in, where we're asking it what the tallest mountain on Earth is. And you can see that it is Mount Everest, located in the Himalayas. The next time we call ChatGPT, you can see we've extended our message list to include this response. Then we've extended it again to ask the question of when it was first summited. ChatGPT responds, Mount Everest was first successfully summited on May 29, 1953. And the final state of our message queue has that appended as well. And then we're done. And that's it. Pretty easy, right? I love playing with ChatGPT because you never really know what it's going to say. In the next video, I'm going to write a prompt to write a poetic short story. And then I'm going to write some code to host that as a web app. So if you're ready to continue your journey using ChatGPT, you can watch that video by clicking on the thumbnail here. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I'm Alex, and I'll see you in the next one.